Hello everyone, I am Cycloxade, and we're going to do some more After Effects today. So people in vocal, you guys can unmute. You can. I'll be doing this a lot more laid back than yesterday. Yesterday I was just trying to rush through and show just VGLX how I did it. But there's been a lot of requests for people for me to actually show how I make stuff and not just show stuff that I've made before. So I've made a little project here where I'm gonna show you how I make a very basic kind of team reel scenario where I show the footage for each team and then have myself, you know, the team name, the team logo, and get into how I set up my patterns, and then yeah. So it's extremely basic, but this works pretty well, and we'll go step by step together on how to make something like this. Because as you can see, I've done the two first teams. So I've taken some teams at random. So here's MBG, here's SKG. And then I've got two others planned that I'll show you how to do them live in a bit. So, I don't know why I have a shape layer there. That should not be it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you how I've set this up, because this is already a bunch of composition nested into one another. So this is the master timeline. This is where everything is being played. This is the final project that you're going to render. This is what it looks like. Everything else that's in this project is going to be shown at some point in this timeline, right? It's just that you can't see individually everything that's there. Like, for example, you can't see the footage files, you can't see the logo files right now, because they're all nestled in all of these compositions. Apparently my screen cap went out, so there we go, start again. Yeah, that works a little bit better. Anyway, so the first thing I did was I made 4 compositions, and you can make compositions by going into your project tab on the left. There's this little icon that says create a new composition. What you can also do is go to composition here and do new composition, or just do Control N. There's a bunch of ways to do the same thing. So just click that, then you get this window. Tells you, asks you the composition name, and then a bunch of information. There's some presets that I don't use. The width and height, I do 720p. It's just the way I do it. 720p 60 FPS. That's just the standard I use. You may use different ones. It doesn't really matter. And then what's mostly going to be important here is the start. Well, the start frame doesn't really matter because you're going to start at 0. But the duration is what matters, because you don't want to make it too short, obviously, because you're not going to be able to fit everything you need in time. You don't want to make it too long either, because then you have to work with stuff that is too long, and you have to shorten it, and it can get very cumbersome. So it's better to just use a here I've got 103, and that's because the total time that I have is 409, which is grossly 103 multiplied by 4. It's not exactly that, but there's a reason why. I made some compositions 1 or 2 frames shorter, just so it would go with the music, because I've not shown you yet. I'm gonna turn off the background music for this. The first thing I did, and this is the first thing you'll do when you're working on high videos, is I pulled up some music. So I just took some song in my library. Just turn this one off. The way that you add a song is very easy. You just take some MP3, you import it into your project, The way you import stuff, you just do file, import, file, and then you go pick it up in your file system. So I grab this song, I just pull it in, and if I turn everything else off, I have this. And that's very nice, but we want a specific part of this song because this is supposed to be the team reel. So this is supposed to be where the song gets, you know, pretty dramatic. But when you do an entire hype video, usually you'll have your song on the master timeline, and then it's just there and it sits there, and you don't really touch it. But for this, since we're focusing on only the team reel part, I'm just gonna click and drag it and shove it backwards to advance the song until I get to a point that I'm satisfied with. And that point just happens to be where I've set it up right there. And this is what we get. So you can tell here that it actually loops quite nicely. This is why my master timeline is kind of an awkward. It's kind of a awkward frames count. It's at 410 frames. It's set up that way so that the song loops perfectly, and that every time I shift from one team to the next, so for example, when I shift from MBG to SKG, it shifts precisely in sync with the song's beat, right? So I've got it set up that way, and you have to finagle with this song to just have it on the proper frame, which can be annoying. But yeah, you just kind of have to set it correctly. But once you do, you don't have to touch it again. So that's very nice. And that's how you do it. If you want to move forward, you just click and drag it to the left. If you want to move it backward, click and drag it to the right. That's just how you do it. There's nothing much else to do with the music part. So it's just, you know, you import your song, you drag it in, and then you drag it forward or back, depending on what part of the song you're interested in. So the first thing I did, well, the second thing I did is I created those 4 compositions called tutorial 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these correspond to obviously the 4 teams that are going to show up, that I'm going to show off. So if I show you the composition settings, you can see the settings match that of my master composition. So it's still 1280 by 720. It's still 60 frames per second. The only thing that changes is the duration, because as I said, I wanted it to be a quarter of the total duration of my master timeline. So it's set at 103. But since 4010 isn't really can't really be divided by 4, I have it so some compositions have 103 frames duration, and some of them have 102. So it's not a perfect science, but to make it match the music best, that's the way I do it. I just try to make it match the best I can by dividing by 4, and then either subtracting or adding some more frames to certain compositions that I use. So the first composition is this one, and it's got some stuff in it. Stream is gone again? God damn it. Fucking Discord, you suck. You share that again. Yo. Let me know if it disconnects again. You guys can unmute, by the way, I don't mind. So we'll turn this off for now. The first thing you notice is that I have some footage. So this is some stock MBG footage. You can see it right there. It's in my footage tab. So I've got it organized so that I've got all my logos in a folder and all my footage in a different folder. If you want to make some folders on your project, you just click this button and then you name it what you want. And then once you've got your folder created, I just import some stuff again. Import. You can even import multiple files. And if I go in my, let's see, it's in Cyclo videos, and then I just go to VGL14 high footage, and then I can select some stuff. Like just select this, and then like that, and then select this, and you can import it, and there it is. It shows up, and then you click done if you don't want to import anything else. So there you go. That's how you do that. And I can delete them because I'm not going to use them. So again, to import the footage that's in your project into your timeline, very easy. You just click and drag. And here you notice that things are looking a bit different. We're going to want to position that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to mute that footage, because if we don't, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. And there's not. We don't really want the commentators and or the goal horn playing while we look at the team reel. So the first thing we want to do is mute it, and we do that simply by clicking that button. And then we want to, since we only have 100 and change frames to work with, we want to center that footage around something that's interesting. And I tend to not have it be just gameplay footage of the goal being scored. I tend to either make it the celebration or the replay of the goal, because right now this is extremely far away from the action, so it's not really dramatic. You don't really get much out of that point of view. But if I move it forward like this, and in fact I'll just delete it because I've got it properly set up. Here, this is what it looks like. It's rendering, but yeah, it plays it in repeat. And here you can see the MVG players celebrating. So that's usually what I use. I don't spend too much time looking for footage. I just try to make it so, you know, it's a celebration or some goal replay. Something that you should watch out. I'll move it a bit forward. Is you want to watch out for angle changes. So here you can see right around this part the camera changes, and that's not necessarily something you want to avoid, but you want to avoid it happening towards the end of the composition, because then it'll look very awkward. For example, if I play it like this, it switches and then it immediately resets. And when you play your master composition, this is what it's gonna look like. Not very. It's kind of awkward, so you don't really want to do that. So I'll just reset that. Yeah, that plays properly. Let me get some music back on. There we go. So that's something you want to watch out. Just either make it a still image or make sure that there's no switch at the end or at the beginning of your composition, because it'll look weird if you do if it does show up. But that's something I learned pretty early on, is to watch out for that. But other than that, I just selected the footage, selected a part that I felt was appropriate, and that's it. I don't have to do anything else to that footage anymore. But just having the footage of the team is a bit dull, so you've noticed in my hype videos I tend to add some stuff in, and that's what we're gonna do next. I tend to add the team's logo, the team's name, well, their designation, as for example this would be MBG, and then the full name of the general. So if we look at that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything that's on this layer, copy, paste, and here you can see I've got some stuff going. So the first thing is the logo. That's the easiest thing to do. You just go into your logos, and again you have to import them, but once you got them, you just click and drag. There it shows up. You can see that compared to the one that I've got down there, this one is much bigger, so that's not great. So to fix that, you can push with the logo selected, you push S on your keyboard and this shows up, or you can either just flip the entire arrow and then you get the entire transform tab open. But what you want to do is mess with the scale. So there's several ways to do it, but I tend to prefer just selecting scale, and then we want to make sure that this is clicked in, because if you don't, then it's gonna do this when you move it, and we want to preserve aspect ratio as much as possible. So we keep that clicked in, and then we resize the logo by click and dragging left or right depending on what we want. And then we can just click on the preview screen and just drag the logo to where we want it to be. So nothing much to it than that. Pretty simple stuff. Again. Next is the text. So again, I've not done much to this text. If you I'll create another text layer to show you. So this is just MBG. So I just create a new text layer. Just type MBG. And I've got this font set as NameX, but I could change it. I've got a bunch of fonts. You use what is appropriate. I've downloaded a bunch of fonts in the past just to give myself a lot of options, and I spend a lot of time just looking for what the font I want to use is. So yeah. So I go to this, and then obviously this is already a proper size, but if I want to change the size of this font, I can just go in here in my character tab, and it gives me some presets, but generally it's for pretty small text. You can also, just like we did with the scale earlier with the logo, you can just click and drag to the left and to the right, and then you can make your text bigger. So, you know, that's how you do that. And then you'll also notice that on the text that I've got right there, I've got a bit of a shadow going, so it's easier to see on the footage. So to do that, we go into our Effects tab, and there's two ways to do it. Either you know what the... maybe we skip this song. Yeah. So there's several ways to add a shadow here. Either you know that the effect we're looking for is called drop shadow, and then you just type that in, and there it is. Or you don't know where it is, and it's a bit of a jog to go through every single menu and look for it. But here it is. It's in perspective, drop shadow. So that's something to remember, because you use a bunch of drop shadows. At least I do in After Effects. They're pretty useful. So I just click the effect, you drag it over to the text that you want, or if you don't want to mess up, you can just click and drag over to the layer that you're working on, and you just release, and then it shows up here. You got your effect controls here, and you can see here that it's already positioned properly. You can change the opacity, so I'll make it just a little bit more a little bit less transparent, so it's easier to see with the footage in the background. You can change the shadow's color. Obviously, you can do all sorts of things here. You can change the direction of the shadow. So again, click and drag to change. You can change the distance. So if you ever used the shadow tool in Photoshop, this is the same thing. Give it a 5. And then softness, I'll increase the distance to show you. Softness just makes it more or less blurry to give it impression of bigger distance or not, compared to the background that you're projecting the shadow on. So yeah, I left it at 0. And if you want only the shadow for some reason, you can click that and it'll only show the shadow. So that's how you do that. And that's all that I've done to this text. There's nothing more to it than that. Here I've got just another line. It's the same text, and this is something that can be interesting. I can show you. I'll type Mountain Blade General. Now this is obviously I've misspelled Mountain Blade for jokes, because it's important to have jokes in your high videos. So I haven't done this in an actual high video before, but I might in the future. And let's imagine that I was working with a different color. See, let's make this text white. And for example, let's say, well, I'll just take this away. There you go. And let's say, okay, I want this. I want this text. I want the properties of this text to be copied onto this. So what can I do? The first thing you can do is you can go into your drop down here, and you'll see a text tab, an effects tab, and a transform tab. So transform is where the position and the scale of your text is going to be. So if you wanted to make this text the same size as this one, that's where you do that. But here we don't really care. We mostly care about the effects, namely the drop shadow. So if you don't want to go through the effects and presets tab every time, what you can do on a layer that already has it properly, you can just select the drop shadow here in the effects control tab, Control C, select the text that you want to copy the effects onto, Control V, and there it is. And then, for example, if I say increase the distance and then change the direction, and I can do the same thing, copy, paste. Oh, wrong wrong layer. But yeah, copy, paste, and there you go. It's easy as that. And then for the color of your text, you just take the eyedropper, get into there, and there you go. It's easy as that. So just delete that. Back to the one that I've set up. So the last thing that you see is this little shape right there. So this one is probably this is just to add some color and to show the team colors, because you know, you kind of want to add some personality to your reel, otherwise it's gonna look a bit dull. So I've gone for this because it's pretty simple and it shows just a few things you can do in After Effects. So this is a shape layer consisting of 2 rectangles. So if I make a new, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to replicate this effect right now. So the first thing I do is I go into layer and I want a new shape layer, which you can get right here. And something I want you to pay attention to is to make, you could make any shape you want using the pen tool, and that's perfectly nice and good, but that's not what I'm doing here. Because there are presets for specific shapes that you can make. So yeah, I just want to make some rectangles, so I just select the rectangle tool. And I also want those rectangles to be the same size because I'm going to create 2 of them. And to help me do that, I'm going to go into View and Show Grid. And another thing I'm going to do is go back to View and then right below it, Snap to Grid. So this will allow me to create a shape and then have it snap to the grid so that every time I make a shape, I can easily have it the same size regardless of where I make it. So that's very useful. So for example, let's make our first shape right here. And I want the second rectangle to be touching the other one. So let's make one right next to it, same size. And that looks pretty good. Now I want them to, I want these rectangles to have the color of the team. So the first thing I do is I turn off the grid because it is distracting and I don't really need it anymore. And now I want to select rectangle 1 because I want my rectangles to have different colors. So this is my first rectangle, and then at the top you can see there's a fill. So you click that, and again you get this window to show up. And then this is where you'd put the this is where you'd select the team's home and away color. I'll show this later when we do the other teams that I haven't done yet. For this, I'm just gonna copy what's on screen. So team colors for MBG are black and red. So I select the other rectangle, go to fill. Again, fill that in. And there you go. But just 2 vertical rectangles like this, it's a bit boring. So what I would like to do is rotate it a little bit. So to do that, I just press R while I've got my shape layer selected. Or what I can do is just open it, go to transform, and there's my rotation thing right there. And you can see it says OX plus 0.0 degrees. So X is the amount of revolutions, so I can set that to any number and it won't change anything because this is equal to 360 degrees. It's only gonna get this number is only gonna get useful when you want to do animated rotations. Here we don't do that, so we don't really care. All we want to do is to have this this shape rotated on its side a tiny bit. So I'll go for 8 degrees, for example. So I've got it set to 8 degrees. I hit enter, and now you can see it's kind of rotated on the side. That's perfect. That's what I want. But now if you compare it to what I've got set up, you'll see, oh wait, the top and bottom parts are actually cut, which kind of makes it look like sort of a racing livery design, right? So the way to do that is we're going to use a mask. And the way that we want to use a mask, we you could just think, oh, you know, I'll just pick the rectangle tool and then draw a rectangular mask on my shape layer, and it will look fine. But we can't do that, and I'm about to show you why. First, to make a mask on any kind of layer, the first thing you must select is either the rectangle tool or any shape tool that you'd like, or the pen tool. The next thing that you want to have selected is over here. So this says tool creates shape. That's not what we want. We want the tool to create a mask. So you do that by clicking on here, and then it says tool creates mask. So that's what we want. And now we can't use the rectangle tool because we have rotated this layer, and the mask we will create on this layer will also be rotated. As you can see, yeah, I'm making a rectangle, but it's already rotated, and that's not what I want, because I want the up and top parts to be perfectly straight, horizontally straight. So I can't use a rectangle here. That's not gonna work. What I can use, however, let me put this back in the center. What I can use, however, is the pen tool. The pen tool doesn't really care about what the orientation of your layer is, because you just place some points. I placed my first point just where I could draw a straight line. So let's see, for example, I could put it here, and then I'm going to move across to the other side. I'm going to hold in Shift to make it a straight line, and then click. And you can see it's made a perfectly straight line. So I'm going to do the same for the bottom part. So see, somewhere around here, so something like that. Again, I've got Shift. I'm holding in Shift still, and then place another one across, and then do it like this, and bam, there you go. It automatically makes your mask, and it makes it nice and horizontal. Now, if I deselect my mask, hide all of this. There you go. Looks just like this, except this has, once again, a drop shadow. So once again, what I do, I go into my layer that I've already completed. I select drop shadow, copy, go back to the layer I want the drop shadow on, paste, and there you have it. It's no harder than that. Now that's all well and good. If we look at our footage, now we actually have some stuff in, which is nice. But now I would like all of this to come in during the footage playing, just not have it sit there. And there's multiple ways to do this. I will show you the annoying way and the actual easy way. So the first way that you could do this, which I don't recommend, is I could select all of these layers and say, okay, I want all of these layers to move at the same time, and have the and you know, just stay together as they come in. Because, for example, what I could do that is not going to work is say, okay, I want to animate this, so I want to start by animating, for example, the logo. So I go to my drop down. I want to change the position because I want it to be animated, so I want to change the position, obviously. So this is where I want my logo to end up. So the first thing I'm going to do to enable an animation is click on the clock or the stopwatch next to position. And what this does is that, you can't really see it because the timeline's in the way, but it creates a diamond here, which is a keyframe. I talked about it in the last tutorial I did. So now I've got my keyframe created, and I can slide it around the timeline as I want. So let's say I want it at 15 seconds. That's very nice. So what I'm saying here is that I'm going to have a specific value for my position at this specific frame. But if I change it right now, I only have one keyframe, so there's not really anything that's going to happen because I need at least 2 keyframes to see a change. So what I do is I go forward a little bit, we'll say at 40. Then I'll click on this diamond over there, and this will add a different keyframe. And now to induce movement, I'll use these arrows over there to jump between my keyframes. So now I'm going back and forth between the first and the second. Right? And what I want to do is select one of them, for example, the first one, because the second one, we don't want to touch that second keyframe, because that's supposed to be your AND keyframe. You already have your logo where you want it to be. So this keyframe is fine. It doesn't need to be touched anymore. This one is the one where I need to switch up some values. So let's say I want the logo to come from off screen. Alright. So I need to change the position, namely the X value, because the X is horizontal, the Y is vertical, as you all know. So what I can do is I can either have it go from the left side of the screen to the right, so just pull it left until it's completely off screen, and then when I play it, God damn it! So this is a mistake I made. I selected both keyframes there. You can see both of them are selected. You don't want to do that, because if you select both keyframes, obviously you're going to change the values on both of them. So here I'm actually selecting only this precise keyframe, and now I'm changing the value. And now you can see actually a dotted line, and the more I move it, the further away the dots are going to be. And now we're going to see some movement when I play this footage. Let's see. There you go. Now you've got some movement. So that's all nice and good, but the first thing is I actually want this to come from the right, so let's drag it to the right. And let's play, and it comes in nicely. But let's say that I want the movement to be a little bit more dynamic, because right now the movement is very flat, as in it is moving at the same speed across until it reaches its destination, and that's a bit boring. So how can we make this a little bit more dynamic? Well, to change that, we go into our graph editor, and the first time you're going to click it, you're going to see these 2 lines. But we're not going to want to mess with these lines very much right now. We want to change the speed at which things are occurring. So to mess with that, we click on this drop-down menu over there. It says choose graph type and options. And we select edit speed graph. And now we actually have the and you can see that right now that the speed is constant. It's a little bit above 1,500 pixels per second. But we can modify that all we want. So for example, I could take this keyframe right there, and I could pull it down like this, or I could pull it up. And that would change how fast the logo is coming to this. For example, if I lift it up, it comes in faster. If I pull it down, it'll come in lower, or slower rather. But what I want to do, this specific instance, is let it be level with this one. Or rather, no. That's not what I want to do. I want the logo to come in at full speed and then gradually slow down. So I do that by taking this point, I grab it and I pull it all the way down. And then I grab this little handle and I tug it until it says influence 100%. And now you can see it's going to accelerate very quickly and then rapidly drop down. Now let's play it in real time. And you can kind of see, it's not that obvious, but you can see that the object is slowing down as it comes in. So that's how you do that. I use that effect a lot. Messing with the graph editor is something you'll be interested in, because it can make your animations feel a lot more dynamic. So we're done with the graph editor, so we can close it. And that looks real good. But now that I've done the animation for this specific image, obviously I'm going to want all of this here to follow. And what you might think would be a good idea is say, oh, well, I can just copy my position setup on this specific layer and then copy it into another. So if I take this one, I just open it up, go to transform, and hit paste, and hey, there you go, I've got my animation. Except, oh wait, what is this? That's something, that's a trap you might fall into when you're starting out with After Effects, is that you're actually, when you copy paste position values, you are putting this specific layer, you're placing it right on top of this one. And that's obviously not what you want to do. You want it back where we had it before, left of this one. So that's why when you're moving, you know, several items at a time, you don't want to do their movement individually. So there's several ways to do the movement of several items at the same time. The first one, which is cumbersome and I don't recommend doing it, is just selecting everything, hitting P to get the position, then hit the stopwatch with all 4 layers selected, which creates a keyframe on all layers. Then once again we move forward, create another keyframe, and then go back to our first, and then we drag it all out of frame. And this will work. As you can see, it's all moving in nicely, and the space between each item is respected. It doesn't move. And once again, we could go into our graph editor and grab all of this. And this is why I don't like to do it, because changing the values of changing the speed values of a bunch of shit at once is very annoying, because you bump into a lot of crap. If, for example, I pulled this one down, then I have to pull this one down, and it's just it gets very cumbersome. So I don't recommend doing that. What you can do, and this is what I have done, is say, okay, see, I have these items, they're on top of a background that's not, that it doesn't really interact with. So what I can do is I can just act as if these 4 layers are just one layer. You could do this in Photoshop by merging layers. In After Effects it's a bit different. What we can do is select all the layers that we want, then we right click and we have an option called Pre-Compose. So you click it and then it tells you name it. So I've got the one named down here that's called MBG. I'll name this one MBG Test. And it creates a new pre-composition. And if you click that, it takes you to, well, every single layer that you selected put into its own little composition. And what that does is, if you go back to the screen that we had before, now if I do any kind of transformation on this pre-composition, it's as if I applied it to every single item that's in it. So for example, let's say I want to scale it up. I want to make an animation where it scales up. Sure, whatever, let's do it. Click on the stopwatch to create a keyframe, move it forward a bit, click on the diamond to create a second keyframe, and let's say I want to make everything bigger. So I'll just drag the scale by, let's see, 180, and then it goes off screen, but this is just for the sake of the example. And then whoosh, everything in that pre-composition will be affected by the change. So back to what we wanted, which is some animation on the position. So again, click the stopwatch on the position, go a bit further in the timeline, add a keyframe, and we want it to come into the screen. So this keyframe is proper, we don't need to change it at all. We go back to the first one, and we pull it to the side. And as you can see, using only one keyframe, we've moved a bunch of shit all at once. So that's something that could be very useful if you already know where all your items are going to end up, where you want them to end up, and you want to have them move at the same speed. you can just make a single composition where you put all of them in. And then let's say, for example, yeah, but what if I want, for example, this little thingy to move at a different pace? Well, you could do that. All you have to do is you can either just take it out of the composition entirely by doing a Control X. Oh, sorry, I've got everything selected. You just Control X, and it removes it, and then you can paste it back in here. And there it is. Let's see. Paste it back in. Yep. But if you still want the movement, but also add some unique movement to that specific layer, you can also do that. If I go to MBG test, and then, for example, say I want this one to come down. Let's say I want to do that again. Click position on, click the stopwatch next to position. Then go forward, add a keyframe. And then we go back to the first keyframe. And let's say I want this one to come from the top of the screen. So I just do it like this. There you go. And now what you'll be able to see is that when I play this, it drops down nicely. And when I play it, this is what it gives us. It's going to combine the downwards motion that I wanted in my pre-composition and the sideways motion I applied for the whole composition. So you can combine and do some really funky stuff with that. So that's how pre-compositions work. They're very useful. At first I wasn't really using them because I couldn't really see the point of them, but now it makes a lot more sense to me, and I really encourage people to use them, because once you know your way around them, you will be able to save a lot of time in video making. So, and if I want to get rid of all my changes, and let's see, I just want this to be static again, and I don't want this to be animated anymore, I just click on the stopwatch and it removes all the keyframes. So that's how you do that. And that's pretty much all that goes into this, this specific frame. Now obviously this took us 45 minutes to make, just because I went through everything in detail. But when I'm doing this on my own, this is a lot quicker. Alright, so this I want to delete because it doesn't serve any purpose. I want to bring this guy back in. Something that I've done a few times and not really putting attention to it, but that can be useful, is if you want to hide any of your layers, you can click on the eye and it will disable it. And if you want to look at a specific layer only, you can click on this box, it adds a dot, and it will focus, and it will basically turn off every other single layer. So that's something that could be useful. You can make use of that. So there you go. Now we've got our first our first team in our team rail. If I go back to my master timeline, move on to the second one, and this is much of the same. As you can see, I've got the same movement set up, except this time it's from the left of the screen. I still got the logo, still got some text with just some basic text with a drop shadow, and something I could, I guess, get into is this text right here, which is on the horizontal. Sorry, it's vertically flipped. It's what 90 degrees. So in order to achieve that, it's very easy. As you can see, if I drop down and go to transform, you can see the rotation's at 90 degrees. If I turn it back down to 0, well, you can't really see it because this is in the way. But yeah, now it looks proper again. So that's something you can also play with, is the rotation. But other than that, this is just the same thing that I've shown you before. Just close that, and you can see that it's basically the same thing. I've got some footage. And yeah, nothing much more to it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I work when I make some of these. So, for example, let's say our third team is going to be egg. The first thing I want to work with is my footage. So I pull in my egg footage, then mute it because we don't want the we don't want the clip audio to get in, and then move it to an appropriate point. So here, this is a clang goal. Move it forward a bit. Move it forward. And for example, here, Clang is celebrating with Thomas Former, so... Let's see. Here, it's going to render a bit because it's a video, but it's fine. This isn't bad, but let's see if I can get something better. Yeah, there we go. Some more members are showing up. That's also... You can also show some more aesthetics that way. So, there you go. That's not a half bad clip, I would say. So, yeah, sure. I'll go with that. And the next thing I'll do is recreate all this stuff, you know, over the footage. So to do that, I go back on my composition, and I'll start dragging the logo in. Now the egg logo is really big, so we want to scale that down. There you go. Put it into a corner of the screen, for example. And now I want some text. So just clicking the text tool and then clicking anywhere on the screen will allow me to get to write some text. So I'll just do egg. There you go. But this is way too small compared to the others, so I'll just bump up the size over there. That seems pretty good. And we don't want to forget our drop shadow. There you go. I want the opacity to be 80%. And shoot, let's switch things up a bit. Let's make this text. Let's flip it 90 degrees. So to do that, just click R. Just push R. Rotation shows up. 90 degrees, and there you have it. Make things look nice like this. Yep, pretty good. Let's see. Something I could show you also is you can mess with the kerning with this option right there. Let's say I want the letters to be a little bit more close together. I can make it so. And you can see here that the two G's are closer together than the E. So if I want to only have the E have a lower kerning, I can just select it and then drag it down. And there you go. And now that looks pretty good. And obviously, I also want to have engineering games general. So again, I go onto a layer that isn't a text layer. I select the text tool, click anywhere, and then engineering games general. Now obviously, it copied the settings I had for this text, so this is all wrong. The first thing is we want the kerning back to 0. Then we want to drop down the size to something that can be a bit less. Yeah, there we go. That looks pretty good. And then here, let's rotate this one as well, 90 degrees. Let's see, how does that look? Okay, maybe we make it a little bit smaller. 36 is going to be too small. There we go. And here it matches in length nicely, so sure, we'll take that. And then just center the egg text so it looks nice and lined up. There you go. And again, we want our drop shadow, but we already have it on egg, so what we can simply do is copy, paste, and there you go. We've got our shadow. And something interesting here, actually, with the drop shadow is that since I flipped the text to 90 degrees, the shadow isn't at the bottom right anymore, even though it says it is. I need to add plus 90 to make it look proper again. It's not something that is necessary, but my ADD is triggered if I don't do this. So, you know, just have it consistent on the drop shadows. Now, the color of this text has to match the colors for egg. So what I want to do is, you might not be able to see this, but I just open an internet browser and I'll just go on the wiki. So VGLink wiki, go to egg, and on egg's page, the team colors will be listed. So I want my text to be the primary color of the team. So something I can do is just pick the eyedropper, go into Chrome, or whatever browser you use, click the team color that I want, and there it is. And for this, it's pretty easy. Just click the eyedropper, go into here, and there you go. The last thing we want is our little thingus like this. And I'll remake it from scratch once again. But before that, I'm thinking, yeah, I might not have enough space to put it down there. So to make up for that, I'll just select both these layers. Well, no. I'll select this layer first, reduce the size of the text a tiny bit. 210, that looks pretty good. Center it, and go back to engineering games. Make it smaller as well. 40px looks pretty good. We can also make the logo a bit smaller here. I know that's a GD sin, but yeah. Bring it closer to here. Line this up properly. And there you go, now we've got some nice space to put our color strips. So once again, going to go into View, Show Grid, Snap to Grid, and now I want to make a new layer. And so, another way that you can create new layers, you just right click on your timeline on some blank space and go to New, Shape Layer, and bump it forward. So obviously the further up your layer is, the closer to the foreground it will be, so it's just like in Photoshop or OBS. Okay, I'm gonna make my first rectangle. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty good. Then my second rectangle. Alright. And I want my second rectangle to match the secondary team color of egg. So once again, I go into the color tab, pick the eyedropper, go back into Chrome, select the color that I need, and there you go. Once I'm done with that, I can disable the grid. And now both my rectangles are in the same shape layer, so I can just select my layer and move both of them at the same time, which is useful. And once again, we are going to want to tilt it a bit. So let's say 8 degrees. Yeah. You know what, actually? I'll change the shapes of my rectangles, because it's going to look a bit awkward if I don't. So since we don't have this since we don't have that much vertical space to work with, I'm going to make my rectangles a different shape. So maybe something like this. Yeah, that's not bad. And then obviously I want my first rectangle to match the primary color, so that... whoops, that's the wrong one. Yep. Go. Click on fill, click on the color you want, and there you go. Then again, select the layer, move it down here, turn off the grid. Yeah, not bad. And again, bit of a rotation, 8 degrees. It's good enough. And we want to apply, as before, our mask so that the shorter sides are cut vertically. So we want to make sure that we are creating a mask, as always. And we can start placing our points. And there you have it. Again, select the layer, move it to where it feels appropriate. Then again, we want our drop shadow. Copy from some other layer that has it. Paste. And bam! Now the last thing we want to do, obviously, is have all of this be animated. So I just select everything that I need. Recompose. Name it egg. And the only thing I have to do now is hit P. Go to some keyframe. Go to some time code, so let's say 15 frames. Click the stopwatch to add a first keyframe. Go a bit further, so like 40. Hit the diamond to add the second keyframe. And let's say I want this one to come from the top. I want my Y value to be way lower. Let's see how that looks. That's nice, but again, I want the movement to be a bit more dynamic. So, select the position, go into my graph editor, and do the same as always. Drag this point down, and drag this handle to the left. And let's see it. Nice! Now that looks cool. Alright, and the last thing I'm going to do for my last team in my reel. So going to it. And I think I've got Mahjong General as my last team. So again, as always, drag my footage in, mute it, and then put it forward to something that's appropriate. So yeah, for example, this is a Magical Sands goal. Fair enough. Let's see it. There's a camera cut there that I don't really like. So let's move it forward a bit. This is the other team. We don't really care. Hey, sure, why not? This shows a bunch of MJG players. Let's have it like this. Alright, not bad. Maybe we'll drag it a bit forward. Yeah, I like it. Alright, so that's going to be our footage. And now let's say that I want to be lazy and just reuse the layout of one of my previous compositions. So let's say I want to copy what I did for MBG. Well, all I have to do is go into MBG, the pre-composition, select everything, copy, and paste. Now I have to change some things. Obviously, this isn't MBG anymore, it's MJG. And it's not Mountain Blade General. It is Mahjong. Oops. General. Simple enough. I also have to change the logo. So I'll just go into my projects. Drag the logo in. It's obviously way too big, so we scale it down. Put it in the correct spot, and then remove the MBG logo because I don't want it here. You can hit the directional arrows to make fine adjustments in the position, which can be useful. Now obviously the colors are also wrong here, so I'll go back into the wiki and look for the MJG team colors. There, I've got them. So again, I want to select these two text layers, going to my eyedropper on the character tab, and click the right color. In this case, it is a blue. And obviously, this also needs to be changed. And we do that simply by going to Content. Rectangle 1 is the red one, so this is just going to be the same blue that the text is. So there I go. And the second color, I'll grab on the wiki. Bam! I like gray. And there you have it. It's easy as that. The only thing you have to redo is the animation to have it show up on screen. Because right now it's just gonna sit there. That's the only thing you have to do. So that's pretty easy. Again, select all the layers that you want, pre-compose, name it MJG. And then, let's see, go to 15 for example. Bring up position. Keyframe here. 40. Keyframe there. And again, we want it to come from the right, so drag it like this. And again, we want to go to our graph editor. Hold this pin down. Drag this handle left. And there it is. Just like that. And now, let's listen to, well, let's watch. Oh, hang on. This is not, was this not on? Yeah, this wasn't, okay. Good. Yeah, this is because I didn't turn them on. Let's watch our team reel. See how it looks. So the first time you play it, it's going to render, so it's going to slow down. That's normal. Don't be alarmed by it. Alright, and then you only have to do that for however many teams your tournament has. So if it's VG League, it's 48. Or maybe more or less, depending on what we do for VGL 15. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So that only covers 1 hour, so I don't know what else I've got planned for the remaining hour I have of this. If you guys have any particular VG League intro you'd like me to cover, or even any scene in the VG League in some VG League intros that you'd like me to cover, you guys can speak up, obviously. If not, I do have an idea in mind. There's a an intro in particular I'd like to show some cool stuff in. See, this is, yes, VGL 13 KO. So yeah, I'll save this one just for the heck of it. Team reel tutorial. It'll be saved in my After Effects projects. So let's see. Alright, and this is the team reel. We don't need to go over it again. But there are some interesting interesting stuff that I did in this intro. So I guess I'll cover that if you people are cool with it. So the first thing is this part actually uses a camera. So I'll go into it in detail. This is pre-rendered, so that's why it didn't load for 15 years. But we can still go into the actual intro if I find it in the timeline. Let's see. Oh, I might have deleted it actually to make space. Let's see, VGL 13 survival. Yeah, I know, because this just brings up the rendered one. Solids. Ooh, am I gonna be able to show this actually? Because if I deleted the original files, then I might not be. That's okay. I can at least show this part off, because this is a bunch of stuff happening in very quick succession. I can at least be interesting. Let's see, the original. I may not have it anymore. I guess not. That's fine. Let's go into this pre-team reel. So this is a big one. This is a clusterfuck, as you can see. I did this kind of really in urgence because I didn't know what to do. I only had this portion to fill, and I didn't know what to fill it with. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do some random stuff. All right. So the first thing I have is I have just some text that says VGLE 13. Let's try to find it. Is it this one? No, it's not this one. It's not this one either. It is... I'll find it. Yeah, there we go. VGLE 13 outlines. If I turn this off, every single instance of the text is turned off. This is once again text that I've created and then changed into a shape layer. And then what I've done to that was go to, is apply a repeater to it. And I made some copies, which I offset by some amount of values to make it look proper. Let's see, actually, can I position? If I change the start position, we might be, yeah, there we go. So for example, if I change the position here, you can see I can make it kind of like this, or I can make it centered, something like that. But I had it like this, and then I had this animated to make all the repeated text just center in slowly, and then it immediately changes to a different part of the composition. So this only happens for like 10 frames. But yeah, that's something you can do with repeaters. And the other thing that you notice when I'm moving over this footage very briefly is those lines. Those lines, I like using these lines to add some more dynamic, to make it more dynamic, to accentuate movement. These 3 lines right there. Let me find them on the timeline. I think, yeah, it's both of these layers. So what these layers are, in essence, are just, if I turn the effects off, is just a bunch of purple strokes, and I'll do that for the other layer as well. So this is all in all a pretty simple composition, because I only have some text with a repeater, just a solid gray background, and then I've got these two lines over there, and then this line over there that just kind of shows up later on. You can see on the timeline it only shows up about halfway through. But to make it interesting, I set up an effect called trim paths, which you can find on a shape layer if you click add and select trim paths. This is how you add one. And what trim paths allows you to do is kind of animate a shape. So here is just basic strokes, but you can animate those too. And if you animate them properly, you can even induce a lot of dynamic movement, which is nice. So here, for example, you can see on the bottom left, these 2 lines come in, and immediately they're caught up by the end of the stroke. Right? So the way that I achieve that, if I deploy trim paths, is that you've got a start value and an end value. Right now, they're both at 0%. So right now, absolutely nothing of my stroke is going to show. But if I go forward a bit, you can see that the end slider goes up to 58%. So what does that mean? That means that right now you can see the beginning of my stroke at 0% up until 58.9% of the stroke. This is where it cuts off. This is what trim paths allows you to do. See, for example, if I turn off the start value, you'd only be able to see the stroke being drawn like that. But I've added a second one to the start, which you've got our first keyframe there at 0%. And the second keyframe is at 100%. So what this does is, here you see nothing. The end gets going first. Then the start gets moving as well. So that means that right here I can only see after 58.9% of my stroke and before 94.1% of my stroke. And by having this kind of effect, you can really add a dynamic kind of movement to the basic stroke. And let's see if I can recreate that for you right now. So we'll do new layer, new shape layer, real quick. And then just draw a single stroke, very basic stuff. So just 1, 2, there you go. And we want the fill to be none. We want the stroke to be, for example, the purple that we've got on the text. There you go. That shows up nice. But for now, it's not moving at all. So what I do is go to Add, Trim Paths, and then deploy that. And then I want to select the proper keyframes. So I want, as before, I want the end to start moving immediately. So I want it at 0%, and now you can't see my stroke at all. But if I move it forward, you can see, oh, now it actually moves. And if I put it at 100%, you can see the whole stroke. And now if I move the start around, it's the starting point that will change. Right. So now I want this to be animated. So yeah, we'll put the end at 10 at frame number 10. And let's say the starting keyframe will be at 0%. So now the line is just gonna get drawn as I go. Oh, oops. Just hide that. There we go. Now the line is just going to get drawn. Show it slow motion. There you go. But I want some more dynamic movement. I want the start to start moving as well, and catch up to the end right there. So I go to frame number 5. And this is where I'll want my other trim path to start moving. Click another keyframe there to indicate the end. And right now this starting keyframe is fine. Don't need to touch it. And here I'll put it to 100%. And what you'll be able to see here is the end starts moving first, and then the start also gets there. But it's not very dynamic just yet. If I play it in real time, I'll play it in real time a couple times. It's kind of awkward. And we deal with this the same way that we've always dealt. We go to the graph editor, and we want things to accelerate. So I'll bring the first keyframe down, and then take it all the way right. We want the same thing here. And there you go. Now let's look at it. Very nice. All right. And that's how you achieve that effect. Now the second thing I've got going. All right, this is kind of interesting. So I had this stylized 13 right there that I made for the sake of this intro. Let me find it again. I think it's this one. Yeah, and this is a pre-composition, so I'll open it up. And yeah. All it is just the X shows up, and I had it set up so turn this off. I had it set up so I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, hang on. What is the X? This, or yeah, right. These 2 frames are the X, and then these 3 are just the eyes. If I move them aside, you can see the X is still there, and then whoosh. And then these 3 have a movement set up so that they kind of spread out just like a repeater would, except they're not really a repeater in this instance. Although what I could have done is have this one be repeated twice and then have these 2 not exist and just be part of the repeater. But yeah, that's not what I went with. But anyway, it's just a pretty simple animation. This is just some simple. Let's see if I show the grid. Well, it's not matched up with the grid, but it's some simple pen tool work. Just made a stylized X. Then I made a 1 in Roman numerals. Again, very simple, very easy stuff. And then went with some directions, some positional animation. And you can tell that it doesn't perfectly match on top here, but it shows up so briefly that it's hardly noticeable. Let me drink some water before I show you the what I actually do with this. There we go. All right. Alright, so the first thing I do is have just a simple animation. So I'm not doing anything fancy with it. I just have it rotated slightly. You can see if I press R, it's rotated 50 degrees. Normally it would look like this without rotation. But now it looks like this, right? And then I also have these 2 striped patterns on the side, and it's very reminiscent of what I did the other day on VGLX. I had a striped pattern that was kind of similar like this. It's the same design. What it is just a single stroke. So if I disable my repeater, you can see it right there. So I only drew a single thin white stroke, then created a repeater, made a bunch of copies, and then to make it fit into a rectangle, I created a mask, which you should be able to see right there. So this is again to have a clean cut on the sides. And I've also something that's something I didn't do last time, is I animated the mask so that there's some movement with those patterns as well. I play very quickly. You can see that it spreads outwards like this. And the way that you do this is if I drop down and look at my mask path, you can see that it's animated. If I look at my starting keyframe, you can see that the mask is right now is just a line. If I click shape, it shows me that the bounding box has the same left and right values, so it's effectively just a line, right? But if I go into my other keyframe, I can see that my bounding box, the right value is still the same, but the left value is much lower. In fact, it's in the negatives. So that's how you can achieve that. And I've got the same setup on the other layer that I'm doing this, just with a different mask. But yeah, that's how you can do that. Pretty simple stuff. Working with masks is very useful. And again, this is another intro where I basically was relying on a bunch of masks and repeaters. Here the background is just, again, solid purple. Nothing much to it. Now here, you might think I'm just taking the this. Hang on, where is it? You might think I'm just taking this and multiplying a bunch of times, but no, I did this the hard way and just Every single one of these 9 patterns, or yeah, I guess it's a pattern or composition that you see on your screen is separate on your timeline. So go through them, but they're all identical. So there you go. And again, the animation is done inside of the composition. So I just have to drag. I can only what I can just do is just drag those compositions in, and it will happen automatically. And the other thing I've got going is I made this made these shapes kind of, it's a cross and then 3 strokes, kind of make it look like 13, but it's so brief you can barely even see them on the screen. And what I wanted to do with them is you can see that they're very slightly offset on the timeline. But if I disable all of them except for one, you will see that it's actually pretty basic what I do with them. Yeah, there we go. Now it shows up. So it just shows up right there. And then starts falling down, and then I also change the opacity. So if I go into my transform tab, you can see all I do is just I have a simple position change. So not even if I select position and go to my graph, it's linear. And the opacity is also linear. So I just wanted this this little shape to fall down the screen and gradually get transparent. So that's what it does. But I wanted this effect to go all over the screen. So I just made a bunch of layers, of duplicated layers, and then drag them at different time offsets to give it a kind of a, you know, to give it some, I don't know how you'd call it. It's not exactly random, but, you know, it's offset. I guess there's no better word. Now, this is pretty interesting as well. This is something I don't even know how I came to do this, but whatever. This is a bunch of text layers, and this is one of the very rare times where I worked with where I turned off the aspect ratio. And what I did there is just so yeah, it's the knockout frame, and you can see right there, this is actually also stretched. If it was in proper dimensions, it would look like this. I stretched it to 100% on the vertical. And here I have a bunch of text that basically is stacked. The first letter of each is stacked because knock has a K at the start and at the end, so I could do that. And every single of these layers that has the word knock written on it, I have an animator, a range selector, that just basically makes the letters appear one at a time. So if I disable this, you'll be able to see it better. There you go. And then this is just a scale animation. I start with it stretched out at 700%, have it down to 70%. Nothing weird there. The other thing that you can notice on this this little animation is the curved lines, or rather the circles, as we're about to see. You can find them. Is that it? Yeah, there they are. So these are just some ellipses that you can make with this tool. Yeah, there you go. And I've got it set up with some trim paths. So it's it's much it's very similar to what I had earlier with the trim paths here and there. Let's go back to my It's very similar, except it's a bit harder to work with because you also have to work with offset. Because here, if I were to just go to 0, it wouldn't work if I just well, I'll show you actually. Let me just see, layer, new shape layer. Let's do some random circle, and then trim paths, and then let's say, okay, start, end, whatever. Move it forward a bit, and I'm gonna hide a bunch of stuff so you can actually see it. Same for these layers. 6 and 7. Yeah, there you go. For example, if I did it just like I did before, so here I want the start to be 0. Right? And or I did it like this, and here I want the start to be 100. It doesn't really achieve the effect that I want compared to what I have set up, where I have a stroke just kind of going around, but not really reducing as it goes around. I just wanted a some amount of that circle on screen at all times. So the way that I did that is, instead of using start and end, which I did mess around with, because you can see it goes from 0 to 25, so we actually get start of it. And then the end is also 0 to 25, we can't really notice. But instead of that, what I just messed around with was the offset. So the offset, just on a shape like an ellipse, is just going to dictate where exactly in the circle the stroke that you've got highlighted is going to be. So for example, let's see, if, say right now I disable it and it's at 135 plus 2. I can change that value however I well please. So I had it animated. Have it start at the top and then make a full revolution like that. And then let's see. This looks like a mask, but it might not be one. That's it. No, because it's a text layer. Oh, this is the one. Oh, these are two masks actually. I've got two masks just closing in on this like that. Could have just used a single mask and used an inverted mask to achieve the same effect, but I guess I was being stupid that day. Oh, whatever. Okay, so this is interesting also. Drink some more water and then I'll tell you all about it. So over there, this is once again just some animated text. I just wrote 13 in some font and then converted it to a shape layer. And something that's interesting is that when you convert a text to a shape layer, it will create a different shape for each and every letter that you have typed. So I took advantage of that here to make an animation letter by letter. So you can see it's just a simple position change. Not much to it, but it's offset letter by letter. And if I remember correctly, it's actually in sync with the music. Kind of. So there's nothing much to it besides that. But you can notice while I'm looking at this that every time that a letter arrives, the camera kind of blurs and shakes a little bit. So I've done that with an adjustment layer. It's just some directional blur, and every time I've got a letter arrive, I've set the blur length to increase. So you can see right now. You see, so if you look at this while I move around on the timeline, here it's at 0. And then goes to 18, 0, 18, 0, 18, 0. Just have it move it back and forth like that to create kind of an impact as the letters fly in. And then there's this tomfoolery which I'm about to talk about. Let's see. Show up. When does it show up? Should be all the way up. Yes. So again, this is just a rectangle with a mask on it. The mask is just to make the to make it look like there's movement instead of having the actual shape move. I just have a mask like this. So I look at what the mask is doing here. Here is just a line, and it's off screen, so you can't even see it. Then the right side of the mask is going to go over there until we reach this point where the left side of the mask is going to retract. And over there we have a final keyframe where it's back to being aligned. So let's see, can I rotate this? If I do it, it's 0. And scale it down just a bit, you'll be able to see it better. There you go. Simple enough. That's just what it does. And then you have some text showing up, and I've got a bit of animation on this text as well, just to make it look like the text and the box that it's on are actually moving, but it's just the text that's moving. The box isn't doing anything. But yeah, I have it. I have some opacity and some positional animation there. I have it. I start by having it fade in with some opacity, and it kind of moves across. Then it fades back out. So it's pretty simple stuff. But it moves very slowly across the screen to again indicate some amount of movement. And they're here, these layers. It's more of the same, just some more trim paths. Just again, just to indicate some more movements, make it more dynamic. I have it in different shapes. Again, just to do some variety. And then the last thing is oh, it's actually not on this slide. Yeah, there you go. It's just the get hype slide. It's very simple stuff. Just some text moving left and right very slowly, or from right to left slowly. And there you go. see. There a particular transition? Yes, it does move in. But again, that's just positional change. I have it swoop in, then it does its own thing. It's not actually moving right now, or it's not moving on this. This composition is not moving, and there moves out the way. That's pretty much it. I don't know if there's anything else I can show. Let's see. It's the end, maybe. So this bit, is this pre-rendered? It's not good. So this is an effect I've used on the, let's see, can you render? Yeah, the thing is it's rendering a bunch of shit at once here, so it slows down a bunch. But all this is, and it looks very complicated, but this is just every team of the team rail in just scaled down to make it fit the entire screen. And then at the center is just the knockout pape. And then what I did is I made all of them 3D layers, and I had a camera zoomed in way in to the knockout pape, and then just zoomed it out to fit every single panel on screen. And there's also a bit of an effect. You can see here the edges are kind of warped. That's because I've got an adjustment layer with an effect called optics compensation and a field of view. And this is something I've used in my most recent knockouts video as well. And you can even see, where's the, yeah, it starts at 100%, but you can accentuate it even more, right? So that's something kind of interesting that I've used before. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this this intro. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is that's gonna be it for this stream. And then for the people that are staying in the call, I'm gonna set up Tapping in the Dead next. So for those that watch the stream / VOD, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was detailed enough that you can now start making some stuff in After Effects. I tried to be as thorough as I could, to just have something that even a total newcomer could be familiar with. But I guess I'll know through comments and such if I did a good job or not. If some people out there want to get going, make some stuff in After Effects and need some guidance, you can make sure to find me if you have some questions about some stuff, and I'll be sure to help the best I can. Otherwise, just remember that there's a ton of tutorials for After Effects, just basic to advanced stuff. YouTube is chock full of tutorials for very specific stuff, so don't hesitate to take a look there as well. But if it's just high video stuff that I know how to resolve, then you can just ask me and I'll help you out. Alright, so thank you guys for watching, and yeah, good luck with After Effects, I suppose.